In 2018, labels began a bidding war for an artist by the name of Dominic Fike, and he eventually ended up signing with Columbia Records for a reported $4 million. Typically, when labels start bidding wars for artists, they have a lot of buzz or a major hit, but Dominic had none of that. After signing, people began looking into him just to find out that he had no music. It was so strange that not only was he accused of being an industry plant, but as Rolling Stone said, it was as if the label had thrown a reported $4 million to a ghost. So was Dominic Fike really a ghost, or was there more to the story? Well, today we're going to check out how Dominic Fike got a $4 million deal with no music. It's 1995 in Naples, Florida, and Dominic Fike is born to parents who were regularly out of his life. His mother was a single mother who was in and out of jail for drug-related issues, and he said, "Most of the male figures in my life were really shitty. People that I was supposed to call dad, they were really shitty to her, to us." Because of this, Dominic and his siblings were nearly homeless, moving around from place to place. They would stay with his older brother, relatives, or friends of their parents. One person Dominic lived with was, as he described, a super crackhead, and when his mom sent them money for school and stuff, she would spend it on drugs. His early life was filled with a ton of struggle, many of which was caused by drugs, but Dominic still persevered. He took up an interest in music at a young age, and when his dad was around, he taught Dominic and his siblings the guitar. They would even make music on GarageBand and make videos together. But the musical interest his dad instilled in him never left. Dominic continued learning guitar with the help of YouTube tutorials when he was 10 years old, and he kept getting better. Because of their upbringing and financial situation though, Dominic never thought that music would be what he would do for a living. He thought that it was much more likely that he would end up in the military. At one point, Dominic even had to sell his guitar just to afford food. So to get away from all of the struggle and the troubles at home, he would go off with his friends, smoking weed and making music.
I think the thing that got me through my teenage years was like the studio and the community that I found in music in this very small town.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 or 6 kids were making music, and I kind of like, rounded them up, and we kind of created this movement. I think, because I was like homeless a lot of the time, and I think what got me through that was just my friends in music.
Dominic began releasing music in the early 2010s and formed a rap collective with his friends called Backhouse. His brother Sean, who went by the name Slight, was also a member of this group. His first song that he ever posted on YouTube was a song called Not a Word with Slight, and it really captures his older style of rap very well. Not only was he rapping, but Dominic was also producing music as well because of the lack of resources, forcing him to do much of the work himself. Then him and his friends eventually founded the group Lame Boys Entertainment, which is why he has LBE tatted on his forehead. Most of his music was rap music, and a handful of his old songs, projects, and music videos can still be found online to this day. Dominic was building a small fan base and getting a little bit of buzz in Florida, sort of going the SoundCloud rapper route. In the mid-2010s, you can see tweets from fans reposting his music, saying they loved his songs, and even mentioning that he had done some live shows. In 2015, him and his friends even got booked to perform at Rolling Loud. He details some of these experiences on the song West Coast Collective. Then in 2016, Dominic was trying to capture different emotions, so he started using the guitar in his music. He began experimenting with rock, pop, and other similar genres. However, in 2016, something happened that would change Dominic's life forever. In the summer of 2016, Dominic's younger brother got into a fight. A police officer jumped in trying to break it up, and Dominic also tried to break it up to help his brother. In the process of getting people off of his brother, he ended up pushing a cop. They charged Dom with a felony and placed him on house arrest for 6 months. Other than leaving to go to work at a juice shop, Dominic had nothing but time. So he spent his time writing and recording an EP. His manager bought him some equipment so he could get to work. He had his guitar, his computer, and was in his room doing nothing but making music. Then he had a check-in with his probation officer and failed a drug test, so they sent him to jail for 7 months. While in jail, Dominic kept writing music, but he was afraid that people would forget about him, so he asked his friend Reed to release the music that he had been working on during house arrest.
I thought it was not the best idea. It wasn't finished at the time, but he was very intent on putting it out. He felt like people were forgetting about him.
The songs weren't finished and Reed was hesitant, but Dom really wanted the music out, so then on his birthday in December of 2017, they released the EP, Don't Forget About Me Demos. The EP performed better than anything he released, getting over 50,000 plays on SoundCloud in a week. Then, the labels got a hold of the project. Dominic himself isn't even sure how this got on the label's radars, but he thinks that maybe his artist friend Yeek showed it to some people in the industry. Regardless, labels wanted to meet with him so bad that they flew out to Florida and were talking to him over the computer screens at the jail. The labels thought that he had a ton of potential and saw a very bright future for his career. so a bidding war broke out. People also speculate that labels really wanted him because he perfectly fulfilled the at the time trendy SoundCloud rapper look. So why are people freaking out when he was signed, saying that he was either an industry plant or simply a ghost? Well, after the bidding war broke out, Dominic asked Reed to delete all of his music. He did this for a variety of reasons. Partially to build hype, partially to reintroduce himself to his audience as more of a singer, and partially because the demos weren't that great. They weren't finished, they needed new mixes, and required a lot of polishing. Meanwhile, the bidding war was still going on. Labels even signed his brother Alex, but Dom needed money soon. By this time, he was out of jail, but both of his parents were on trial for more drug-related issues, so he needed money to get them lawyers. Him and his team drove up the price of the bid by showing labels what other ones were bidding, eventually signing a $4 million record deal with Columbia Records. After he signed, the label and them cleared the internet of the majority of his old work, with all that remains being just re-uploads from fans. When people caught wind of this is when everyone began accusing him of being an industry plant.
What do you think is the perception of you at the moment?
I'm an industry plant, the $4 million record deal. It's always the deal and the money before it's the music. As real as it gets, yo. I've made my shit from when I was a little ass kid.
People couldn't understand why an artist with no music or visible backstory was signed for such a big amount of money, but they would soon find out. Dominic and his team decided to revamp his previous EP, Don't Forget About Me Demos, and they released it in October of 2018. The day the EP released, Dominic had to drive his mom to jail to serve a 2-year sentence. It was a bittersweet day, but eventually the EP would end up blowing up, especially the song 3 Nights. 3 Nights landed in the top 10 of the charts, made it to the radio, made it to multiple Spotify playlists, was covered by multiple outlets, and even received cosigns from tons of popular artists. The song also went 2 times platinum. Dominic Fike was blowing up, so he went on tour. His skill was evident and he was quickly nullifying the industry plant accusations and the ghost-like comments. But then, Dominic had another problem on his hands. He went from being basically a nobody to a famous artist with $4 million. This put a ton of stress on him, especially since he was fresh out of jail, taking care of his struggling family, and still needing to pay the label back. He got heavily involved in the rock star lifestyle, partying, renting out yachts, and getting heavily addicted to drugs. His business manager would call him saying things like, "Dude, what the f is wrong with you?" Dominic also said that his family situation wasn't great. It seemed like on top of the pressure of having to make a successful album and pay the label back, he was also dealing with the pressure of taking care of those around him, both his family and friends that he came up with. The pressure of making an album accompanied with writer's block made it a very difficult process for Dom to get through. Regardless, throughout 2019, Dominic released songs like Acai Bowl, Rollerblades, and Phone Numbers, which were all fairly successful. He also collaborated with Kevin Abstract on the song Peach, which was also a very successful song, but the label and the fans still wanted an album. And as GQ said, he had to record a proper album that proved he was worthy of the next big thing hype generated by his deal.
I still have this mindset of like being here and having to get that next check or making sure that we're just like, you know, and it has influenced decisions, but we're kind of dialing it back. I feel safer now.
So after a few singles, Dominic Fike released the album What Could Possibly Go Wrong in July of 2020. The album received plenty of mixed reviews and it didn't quite live up to the hype. Personally, I loved it and a lot of other fans did as well. Songs like Why, Vampire, Politics and Violence, and more performed fairly well, some of which even got radio play. But there was this theme throughout the album of hating fame, which was especially visible on the song Cancel Me, a song about how Dom wishes he could get canceled so he could go back to his normal life. And it is very understandable. Dominic Fike went from being a struggling kid trying to make it as a rapper to a famous pop star with a $4 million record deal. It was weird and it came with a lot of troubles, so Dominic wrote songs about it. It was so evident that even Rolling Stone critiqued it in their review of the album. There were a lot of critiques of the album, many of which Dom saw, and he even alluded to Anthony Fantano's review in another interview, since Anthony Fantano gave him a 4 out of 10. Dominic himself even said he could have been more proud of his first album. But after the release of his first album, it was like a pressure had been lifted off of his shoulders. After he released What Could Possibly Go Wrong and failed a first audition for Euphoria due to being on drugs, Dominic decided to take a step back from the life he had been living. He went to rehab and was getting clean. And when the director of Euphoria heard this, he reached out to Dom to bring him onto the show. Since landing a role in Euphoria, HBO Max's second biggest show, Dominic has entered a whole new lane and gained a whole new following, especially since he had a really popular song on that show as well. Despite the first album not being the huge hit that him, the label, and some fans wanted it to be, a huge weight was lifted off of Dom's shoulders since it was released. He was getting more used to the position he was in, collecting accolades as the years went on. He even said, "With the first album, I was in a much different place. I felt the pressure. Now I don't even think about that. It's not about that." Dominic Fike is now preparing to release his sophomore album, Sunburn, and it'll actually be out by the time this video's out, and I'm sure it'll be amazing. But with this album, Dom is beginning to start a new era.
Yeah, I'm done talking about it. I'm down to close that chapter of my life.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like when I first kind of got here, it was all about where I came from, how I emerged from a jail cell or whatever and made it into this foreign, industry. And now I'm talking about how the growing up here has affected my life now. And I'm kind of just ready to move on with life.
It seems like with this new album, Dominic Fike is done with the past and is ready to move forward with his career, his life, and his music. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below. Other than that, this has been Matty Balls, and I'll see you guys next time.